My neighbor disappeared without a trace, leaving her apartment door open and the TV on. I went in to turn down the volume, and saw myself on the screen. But I was standing outside, looking in through the window. I'm Ryan Stewart, 31, night news editor for a cable channel in Chicago. I have an ordinary life that I carefully keep free of strangeness, until strangeness walked in on its own. It all started with my neighbor across the landing, Emma Collins. Young, reserved, but polite. We barely interacted, just nodded to each other in the hallway. Until one evening when she vanished. I got home around midnight after my shift. Her door was ajar, and a TV was playing inside, no sound, but the screen pulsed with bright flashes. The hallway light flickered like in a cheap thriller, but I'm not easily spooked. I knocked, silence. Called out, no response. I went in. Everything looked normal. Cold noodles on the stove. A mug with a lipstick mark in the sink. And the television, an old model with antennas, was broadcasting some channel I didn't recognize. On screen, an empty corridor. But after a few seconds, a person appeared. Me. Standing by a window. Looking inside. I spun around, nobody outside the window. The TV flickered. Now it was showing another room, mine. Desk, couch, lamp. And again, me. Sleeping on the couch. This was happening right now. Everything identical, the same posture, same clothes, same book on my lap. I turned off the TV. It felt like I'd been turned inside out. On Emma's table lay a notebook. I picked it up. Inside, dozens of entries, almost all handwritten, but in different handwriting. The first line, they don't watch. They broadcast. I called the police. They arrived quickly. Examined the apartment. Said she had probably gone out on her own business. A routine disappearance. No signs of struggle. No evidence. I showed them the notebook, they took it, promising to return with a warrant. They never came back. Not the next day, not a week later. But 2 days after, the notebook appeared again, on my desk this time. I hadn't taken it. I started reading everything in sequence. Inside were journal-like fragments. Descriptions of moments when Emma saw herself in places she hadn't been. How she turned on her camera, and saw herself standing on the stairs. How she wrote messages she never sent, but which came back to her, from her own name. And at the end, the strangest entry. I decided to turn off the TV. That's how it started. When it stopped broadcasting, I saw the real transmission. Everything there, as it is. Or as it was. Or as it will be. I bought myself the exact same old TV model she had. Connected the antenna. Tuned to different frequencies. At about 3:11 a.m., a strange signal began. On screen, a long corridor. No windows. Gray walls, dim lighting. After a minute, a person came around the corner. Me. Only, not me. He was taller, slightly hunched, and his eyes, unnaturally black. He approached the camera, leaned in and whispered. Stop watching. They see through you. The TV turned off by itself. The fuse blew. Since that day, strange things started happening in my apartment. Phone cameras turning on at night. I began finding photos I hadn't taken. My face, from different angles, as if someone was photographing me while I slept. I wrote about this in my personal blog, hidden under a pseudonym. 3 days later, I got a call. A woman's voice, trembling, barely audible. Ryan, it's Emma. Don't look for me. Don't write anymore. They use faces. Now, yours too. The connection cut off. I tried to trace the number, impossible. Blocked. I went to the police again, no information about her case. They said no Emma Collins had ever lived in apartment 4B. Only an elderly man who died 2 years ago. I found surveillance footage from the hallway cameras for that night. It showed me entering her apartment. But inside, I don't see myself, but someone else. Very similar. Except he doesn't come out. And here's the strange part, I enter at 011. But I exit at 006. I tried to explain this to myself. Maybe I was just tired. But then I turned on the TV again. On screen, me. Only now I'm in my room. Looking at the camera. And slowly raising my hand. Showing 3 fingers. Then 2. Then 1. And then, the lights go out. Question: what if screens don't show the future, but simply teach us to be those who will later replace us? It's been 3 weeks since Emma disappeared. The police investigation, if it ever truly existed, has gone cold. Detective Harris, a tired man with bloodshot eyes and a suit that's seen better days, was assigned to the case initially. We met twice. The first time, he seemed genuinely interested. The second time, he could barely remember my name. "Look, Mr. Stewart," he said, shuffling through blank papers in a manila folder. "People disappear all the time in Chicago. Adults have the right to leave without telling their neighbors." "But the notebook," I started. "What notebook?" he asked, genuinely confused. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'd spent 2 hours with him the previous week, going through every entry in that notebook. He'd made notes, asked questions about the handwriting. Now he looked at me like I was speaking another language. The one with different handwritings. The one she kept records in about seeing herself, I insisted. Detective Harris frowned. "Sir, we never found any notebook in Ms. Collins' apartment." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma's words. They use faces. What did that mean? I'd taken to covering my webcam with tape, turning my phone face down at night, even draping a sheet over my TV when it wasn't in use. Yet I still felt watched. My coworker, Nathan, noticed the change in me. We were alone in the editing booth around 2 a.m., cutting footage for the morning broadcast. "Ryan, no offense man, but you look like shit," Nathan said, handing me a cup of coffee. "You still obsessing over that missing neighbor?" I hadn't told him everything, just that a neighbor had disappeared under strange circumstances. Something about Nathan's casual tone bothered me. "She didn't just go missing, Nathan. Something happened to her." Nathan shrugged. "People have reasons to vanish. Debt. Relationships. Maybe she's running from something." I took a sip of coffee. "Or someone. You said she was pretty withdrawn, right? Kept to herself." "Yeah. Ever think maybe she was hiding something? Or from something? Long before she disappeared?" Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly. "What did you say her name was again?" "Emma. Emma Collins." Nathan nodded, typing something into his phone. "Why?" I asked. "No reason," he said, too quickly. "Just curious." The next day, Nathan wasn't at work. His desk had been cleared out. When I asked our supervisor, she looked confused. "Nathan? We don't have anyone by that name in the editing department." "Of course we do. Dark hair, beard, sits next to me every night." She checked the employee directory. No Nathan listed. "You've always worked that station alone, Ryan." I went to the restroom and splashed cold water on my face. Was I losing my mind? I'd worked with Nathan for over a year. We'd gone for drinks after work. I had his phone number. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. No Nathan. I checked my call history. Nothing. Back at my desk, I found a small notebook. One I'd never seen before. Inside, on the first page, in my handwriting. Don't trust the reflections. They're learning to be us. The rest of the pages were filled with observations. Times when lights flickered oddly. Descriptions of dreams about corridors and screens. Notes about people disappearing from photos I didn't remember taking. All in my handwriting. All describing events I had no memory of. I decided to go back to Emma's apartment. The police had stopped their pretense of an investigation, and the building manager hadn't rented it out yet. I still had the spare key I'd taken that first night, a detail I hadn't shared with Detective Harris. The apartment was exactly as it had been, but covered in a thin layer of dust. The TV was still there, unplugged, antenna drooping like wilted flowers. I plugged it in and turned it on. Static. I fiddled with the channels, the frequencies. Nothing but snow and noise. I sat on her couch, defeated. That's when I noticed something under the coffee table. A small digital camera. I picked it up, hands trembling slightly. The battery was dead, but I found a charger in a drawer. While it charged, I examined the apartment more closely. In the bathroom, behind the mirror cabinet, a small hole had been drilled in the wall. Looking through it, I could see directly into my bathroom across the hallway. Had Emma been watching me? Or had someone been watching us both? The camera beeped, indicating it had enough charge to turn on. I pressed the power button and navigated to the photo gallery. There were dozens of images. Me entering my apartment. Me sleeping. Me watching TV. Me at my window, looking out. All taken from positions that seemed impossible, angles that would require the photographer to be hovering in mid-air outside my window, or standing in corners of my room that I knew contained no hiding places. And then, photos of Emma. But strange, Emma taking photos of herself sleeping. Emma photographing herself entering her apartment while she was already inside. Emma at her window, photographed from outside, on the 15th floor. The last image made my blood run cold. It was me, sitting on her couch, holding the camera, looking at photos. Taken from behind. I whirled around. Nobody there. Just the TV, no longer showing static. On screen, a figure that looked like me was recording a figure that looked like me looking at a camera. It was like gazing into infinite mirrors. And then the other me looked up, directly at the camera, smiled, and raised 3 fingers. Then 2. Then 1. The screen went black. But the reflection remained, my face, watching me from the darkness of the screen. I ran back to my apartment and locked the door. My hands shook as I called the only person I thought might help, my sister, Laura. She was a psychiatrist, practical, level-headed. Maybe she could tell me if I was having some kind of breakdown. She answered on the 3rd ring. Ryan? It's late. Is everything okay? I blurted out everything. Emma's disappearance. The notebook. The TV showing impossible images. Nathan vanishing. The camera with photos that couldn't exist. Silence on the other end of the line. Laura? I prompted. Ryan, she said softly, who is Emma? My heart sank. My neighbor. I've told you about her. You've never mentioned any neighbor named Emma to me, Laura said. And Ryan, you don't live in an apartment. You've been in the house for over a year now. I looked around at my apartment, the same one I'd lived in for 3 years. What are you talking about? After Jennifer left, you sold the house in the suburbs and bought that place by the lake. Remember? The renovation project you started? Jennifer. My ex-wife. We divorced 5 years ago. I hadn't lived in a house since. Laura, I'm in my apartment right now. 15th floor, the Madison Building on 43rd Street. Another pause. That's where you lived before Jennifer. Ryan, you're scaring me. Have you been taking your medication? Medication? What medication? I'm coming over, she said. Stay where you are. I hung up, disoriented. I looked around at my apartment. Everything was familiar and yet suddenly strange, as if I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. I went to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. Empty, just as I expected. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura, sending an Uber to pick you up. Address? She didn't know where I lived. My own sister. I texted back my address. Her reply was immediate. That building was condemned 2 years ago after the fire. Stop this, Ryan. Tell me where you really are. Fire? What fire? I went to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline, lights twinkling in the darkness. Everything looked normal. I could see other lit windows in my building. Traffic moving on the streets below. My laptop was open on the desk. I sat down and searched for news about my building. The top result, Madison Tower fire claims 12 lives. Dated 18 months ago. The article showed a charred, gutted building, my building. Listed among the dead, Ryan Stewart, 31, news editor. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. Then an incoming video call notification popped up. Laura. I accepted. The face that appeared wasn't my sister's. It was mine. But not quite, the eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too empty. They're better at being us than we are, my doppelganger said in my voice. That's why they win. The screen went black. And in the darkness of the dead screen, I could see myself. Only I wasn't alone. Emma stood behind me, looking over my shoulder. And behind her, another Emma. And behind that one, another. An infinite regression of Emmas and Ryans, all watching, all broadcasting. I turned around. My apartment was empty. The next morning, I woke on my couch, laptop still open, screen dark. Had I dreamed it all? I checked my search history, no article about any fire. I called Laura. She answered, groggy with sleep. Hey big brother. Everything okay? It's 6 a.m. Do I live in an apartment or a house? I asked without preamble. What? You live in that shoebox apartment you've had forever. Why? Relief flooded through me. No reason. Sorry to wake you. Everything seemed normal that day. I went to work. Nathan was there, complaining about a deadline. No one looked at me strangely. The world had reset itself. That evening, as I approached my building, I noticed a moving van. Someone new was moving into Emma's apartment. A woman with dark hair was directing movers with boxes. Hi, I said. You're moving into 4B. She smiled. Yes, I'm Michelle. Just relocated from Boston. I'm Ryan, across the hall in 4A. She studied my face. Have we met before? You look familiar. I don't think so, I said. Well, nice to meet you, neighbor, she said, extending her hand. As we shook hands, I noticed something on her wrist. A small tattoo, 3 horizontal lines with 1 vertical line crossing through them. The exact symbol I'd seen drawn repeatedly in Emma's notebook. Interesting tattoo, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. She glanced at it. Oh, this old thing. It's a reminder. Of what? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. That were all just reflections of reflections. Broadcasts of broadcasts. She turned back to her moving boxes. As she did, I caught a glimpse inside one, an old television set with rabbit ear antennas. That night, I took out my phone and recorded a video message, addressing it to myself. If you're watching this and you think you're Ryan Stewart, you're not. You're something else wearing his face. Something that learned to be him by watching. They perfect themselves through observation, then replace us when they're ready. Emma knew. Now I know too. The notebooks keep reappearing because they want us to record our observations. It helps them learn. The TVs aren't showing us the future, they're teaching them how to be us in the future. I don't know how much time I have left. If you see yourself on a screen doing something you haven't done yet, run. It means your replacement is ready. I uploaded the video to a private server, set to send to my email in 1 week if I didn't enter a cancellation code. Then I packed a bag. I was leaving Chicago tonight. As I headed toward the door, my TV turned on by itself. On screen, I saw myself recording that video message. Then packing. Then walking to the door. It was broadcasting my present actions with perfect fidelity. The me on the screen turned to look directly at the camera, smiled with an expression I'd never made, and said, "It's too late to run. I'm already here." The doorbell rang.